And welcome to a truly starchy edition of Ben's Junk. As in potato. As in potato quality. So, I have been asked in the past to cover dodgy video transfer devices like this one, and like those crappy Roxio deals, which are still on the market after all these years somehow. But I've just never felt the need to sink, $50 to $100 into something that I know I wouldn't like and would probably never touch again. But nonetheless, a few months ago, while making one of my thrifting videos, I found this guy at a Goodwill for the princely sum of $5. And hopefully the camera will focus on that. But this is the VuPoint Solutions digital video converter. And this was introduced in 2010, and I think specifically mid 2010. So I did find one period YouTube video on this thing touting its introduction, and that was from the Sharper Image, which I think is apt because it feels like an overpriced, underperforming, borderline novelty item with some pseudo-spacey design. Now, having said that, I cannot seem to find what these things sold for at the time. My best guess is that this sold for somewhere in maybe the $100 range, $100 to $150. So anyway, unlike some other devices of this ilk, this thing touts itself as being a PVR, personal video recorder, though it actually stops short of using that particular term. So anyway, the box touts using it to capture from, somewhat ironically, DVR boxes, TVs, so I guess if your TV has a daisy chain output on it, like my Toshiba CRT, and then from VHS and DVD, which is usually encrypted, and camcorders, and of course DVRs are usually encrypted as well. And this is all 100% true. I have tried all this, though admittedly I don't have a DVR per se anymore, but it accepted video out of my little cable box without issue. But anyway, let's take a cut here and we'll take a look at the unit proper and at all the little goodies that were in the box with it. This does kind of look like the sort of thing you'd find at a Sharper Image, doesn't it? Anyway, this is the walking, talking definition of a basic bit of gear. Every last control on this thing is condensed into a mere 4 buttons. And so, going in clockwise order here, we've got the power button, which you have to hold down for it to actually do anything. We've got the next file, next chapter button. And I don't know if it's just my particular unit, but it doesn't seem to do anything. And I can press it like crazy, I can hold it down, nothing ever happens. So then we've got the recording start and stop button, and lastly the playback start and stop button. And the center here, while it makes a nice healthy click, it does not do anything. And actually there's some lights in there so you know that the power is on and that it's recording and that sort of thing. So anyway, let's move around to the back here. So again, very simple. So going from left to right, we've got a spot for the power adapter. Then we've got AV in and outputs, and those are for just 1/8 inch to composite with audio cables. And this thing will only support composite. And then lastly, there's a recessed switch to let you toggle between NTSC and PAL. And this only seems to apply to the final monitor that you're using. So I did run my one and only truly native PAL thing through it. I've got a DVD. And it recorded and played back just fine. It was only when I kicked it into PAL mode that everything kicked into black and white. So, yeah, it seems to only apply to your display. So then on the front here, the one and only thing on the front is an SD card slot. So that's the media we're dealing with here. And otherwise, that's all there is to it. So the original package, and thankfully my copy, my unit, came with all the original goodies, everything you need to make it work, save for the media, at least originally, but more on that in a minute. We got the power. We've got two 1/8" to composite with stereo audio cables. So there's the other one. And there was some software in there as well, which proved to be completely unnecessary, as long as you're running Windows, that is. And yeah, it just seems to be like the codecs to run MP4 stuff. And I guess that was still an issue at the time. I don't remember that being an issue, but who knows? I'm not enough of a computer geek. So aside from that, we've got all the original paperwork. So here's our one sheet of instructions. And actually, they way overwrote this. This thing, you can figure out how to use the unit in 2 minutes, and it doesn't really teach you much. And I found it amusing that they had to put a little bit of an addendum in here, a revised setup step, which, as far as I can tell, matches the old one. And lastly, I just thought this was kind of cute. The FCC Part 15 compliance card. So yes, you're not going to need a license to run this, as one would expect. Now, the package had two little goodies that weren't part of the original setup. So this was a bit of a disappointment. It's just a CDR, data CDR. And unfortunately, there's nothing on it. I was hoping maybe they backed up some of their stuff to data disk, but nope, it is a completely unused blank. And one that will never be used because the camcorder may not pick it up, but it's got some dings and scratches on it, and I've got plenty of blanks. And then the other thing it came with that it did not come with originally was a free, to me, SD card. Now, I was kind of hoping that the previous owner had maybe recorded some stuff off air and I'd be getting some stuff at least from the early 2010s. But no. But there is one file on here. There was one movie, somebody's home movie, and it is about 40 minutes or so of somebody's funeral. Shot from the back of the church, using the built-in mic on the camcorder. You can actually hear the stray cough and sniffle like 10 times better than the people speaking. And then, just for a bit of comedy, the camcorder they were using ran out of battery before the service was over, and apparently they didn't bring a spare battery or the AC adapter or anything with them, so it all just ends. But I guess the real cherry on top was it was shot in late 2010, and it appears, as best as I can tell from the quality of the unit, that it was still shot on like VHS-C. It looks more like something from maybe the late 80s, early 90s, but even though I know it's not, you can tell by the date on screen and by the fashions and stuff. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent there. Let's take a cut, and I've got a bit of a rant to unleash. To say this thing is basic would be an understatement. There are no user adjustable settings on here, not so much as a quality setting. And speaking of quality, it's atrocious. You know when you pull up some video on YouTube that was grabbed off an old tape and posted to the site maybe 10, 15 years ago? I'm pretty sure this is one of the biggies in terms of transfer gear. And if you add somebody's ill-maintained, low-level consumer VHS deck to the mix, yeah, it's a little wobbly and a little messy. But yeah, 100% potato vision with this thing. And to put this in perspective, again, this is from 2010, but video at 480p, the only choice you get with this, comes out to around 7 megabytes per minute. My circa 2002 Sony Handycam, which can pass analog footage completely uncompressed, will give you about 7 seconds of footage for that same 7 megabytes. So yeah, this is just a teeny bit compressed. And to make matters worse, despite using stereo phono cables for the sound, you'd think there would be, stereo compatibility. No, it just mashes everything down to mono, and it squishes the frequency response down quite a bit as well. To my ear, it doesn't sound like there's much shaken above maybe 4 kilohertz. And sometimes the sync is a little dodgy. So in a bit, you'll see some footage that I did, obviously, with this. And the audio is about 3 seconds behind the video. Now, as for the video format, codec, if you want to go there, this captures in ASF, Advanced Systems Format, which I guess isn't inherently bad, but ASF was a Microsoft proprietary thing. But if I've done my reading right, it's effectively a less specific WMV file. And there's nothing wrong with WMV, it's just only as good as whatever the original material and compression settings are. But it seems like it was maybe more of an effort at forcing compatibility or something that you could, I guess, easily transfer to MP4, perhaps. So maybe some computer geek can fill me in on that. Now, if you want to watch your footage, you'd think you could just leave this hooked up to the TV and just kind of use it almost the way you would a VCR, record something and then go back and watch it later. Well, you can, but I would recommend you just take it to your computer. There's a lot of on-screen junk that you cannot get rid of, or if you can, I haven't figured out how. There's nothing in the instructions about it. I've tried whatever configurations of buttons and just nothing seems to happen. So, yeah, I think I've done all I can for this one verbally. So I'm gonna call it a day on the vocal front here, and I'll leave you with a battery of tests and demos and a comparison or two. But otherwise, I think it's time to let this thing do the talking.
Lieben ja la ching bouncing send the down. Anything goes.
My line. Just a crystal ball around here? I must have missed your act.
If I had all night, I'd be an astronaut.
Here. What name?
Tell me.
Okay. You tell me the first letter.
D.
D. A, B, C, D.
The technical quality of television production has improved significantly over the past few years, to the point where an artist can now communicate ideas without the system getting in the way. The technical quality of television production has improved significantly over the past few years, to the point where an artist can now communicate ideas without the system getting in the way.
It was a dodgy transformer, again and again. A dodgy transformer, again and again.
You check your reference material, please.
In the shelter of the Lord, who abide in his shadow.
And where I think I lack, or any one of us lacks words to bring comfort into each other's lives in a moment like this.
Eagle's wings, there you are.
The strife is over. The battle is done. The victory of life has been won. And the song of triumph has begun. Would you join me in prayer?